So your PlayStation 5 does not turn on anymore. I'm gonna show you logically how to fix one. Let's get to it. So the first step in fixing a no power PS5 is I always plug it in here, and we're gonna check and see if we have 12 volts on the board. Now, if you look right here at the multimeter, one lead on ground, one lead on the 12 volt. And as you can see, we do have 12 volts on the main power rail. Now, the one thing I like to check on these boards is a fuse that's right here. On this particular board, it's labeled as F7003. We gotta check this fuse and see if it's blown. Okay, so I do have my multimeter in beep mode. That way we can show that there's a connection between point A and point B. And that's what we want. We want to see if there is a connection. And of course, we do not have a connection. So this fuse is blown, which is like one of the most #1 common things you're gonna see on no power PS5. This fuse is gonna be blown, and likely this chip could also be blown. Not always, but probably about 50 to 65% of the time this chip will blow. Now, my dad always says fuses don't blow for just any reason. Something caused this to blow. It could have been something that touched something. It could have been literally anything. So the next thing I want to do is I want to use a thermal cam. I'm going to turn on my power supply up here. I want to connect my ground here and connect my 12 volts. But before we do, I want to see under the thermal cam and see if there's anything obvious on the board that just stands out to me. Okay. The board is, oh, I see a heat spot right over here. Would you look at that? Something is heating up. Wow, almost 300 degrees. And it looks like it's this chip right over here. So this chip actually, from what I understand, handles the gate driving on these MOSFETs here. If it's shorted, then it would probably show that 5 volts is probably shorted as well. The likelihood, maybe not, but let's see. So we can almost just test by touching the coil here, and it's not exactly shorted. So what we have is probably like a gate voltage sort, but not 100% sure. Now, would this chip just go bad on its own? I'm guessing probably not. So my guess would just be like, look at the USB ports and see if there's anything. And look at that. This USB port is completely trashed. So let's go ahead and replace that, and then we'll see where we're at.
How's it going? Welcome back. All right, we'll go ahead and get you checked out here in just 1 second. Perfect.
That was really easy. It just slipped right in there. That was really, yeah, the USB port. Now that we changed that USB port, let's connect that 12 volts again and just see what it does. Draws 200 milliamps and still does. Figure we could check with the thermal cam again and see if that chip is still getting hot. And it is. Let's change that chip, change our fuse, and we should be good to go. By the way, I wanted to mention, if you go to amtechdirect.com, you can buy flux of your very own, and if you use my discount code chasefournier at checkout, you'll get a discount on your order. Now let's change that fuse. Beautiful. So when we plug the board in now, 12 volts, the board does not do a boot sequence. When the board turns on, you should see on a bench power supply, it draw up to like 200 to maybe 300 milliamps and then back down to 0. Maybe like a system check, if you will. So it wasn't doing that, but it's a 0 amp draw at 12 volts. So this fuse up here is still good. But this chip, if it does not do the boot sequence, a lot of times this chip is the problem. So I just changed this chip, so let's try it. Okay, now we're watching right here, 12 volts. We want to see if this does the boot sequence when we connect 12 volts. Okay, we got our ground connected. Please, please, please do the sequence. And we see 1 milliamp, then off, 1, then off. Okay. So we're going to have to replace this chip. All right. I went into this video assuming that I was going to fix this today, but unfortunately it's not going to be today. I'm going to go ahead and order this chip right here. We'll change it on part 2 and see if we got this thing working.